In this video, I'm going to look at the fifth problem from the Purdue 2014 high school programming competition, the Aplindrome problem. And so the idea is that we're trying to check if a given word is approximately a palindrome. And to be approximately a palindrome, there's essentially two conditions. One that I think a lot of people had trouble noticing, which is that an Aplindrome cannot be a palindrome to start. So if you look at the sample input here, ABBA is a palindrome, so it's not approximately a palindrome. Now, to actually get to what an Aplindrome is, essentially it's a palindrome except for the last two and the first two letters, where in either case they're just switches around. So if you look at BABA, that's an Aplindrome because if you switch the B and A around at the beginning two letters, suddenly it becomes ABBA, which is a palindrome. So it's close, but not quite there. And likewise, BABBA, if you were to switch around the first two letters and get AB, then you would have a palindrome. What's interesting is it doesn't matter which two you switch around. In fact, that's a reasonable way to solve this problem is just to take the first two letters, switch them around, and see if you end up with a palindrome. That works as long as you make sure that it's not a palindrome to start. So I'm going to go ahead and attack this problem. So I need a scanner because I'm going to have to read in a number of test cases, just like all the other problems. And then because I'm going to be reading in letters and numbers, I'm going to go ahead and use the technique I've been using before, which is I'm going to actually read in a line and then convert it to an integer. And I probably don't have to do this, I just like to do it this way. Then I'm going to have to write a loop that's going to run the number of test cases that I have. So I less than num, I plus plus. And then I'm going to have to read in another line, which is going to represent something that we're going to check to see if it's going to be an Aplindrome or not. There's several things that we need to check to make sure that this works right. One is that we need to make sure that essentially the first two letters and the last two letters are exactly the same. So that means we want to check to see, is it the case that, so if we have the phrase like A, B, C, D, E, D, C, B, A, this has the possibility to be an Aplindrome because we have the first two and the last two letters are switch arounds. So that's what I want to look for first. So the way I'm going to check this is not the way you have to do it, but I'm going to get the first character, which is at position 0. I'm going to get the second character, which is the one at position 1. Oops, char at, which I can't spell. Then the last character is going to be at the length of the line minus 1. Minus 1. And I'm missing an equals. There we go. Then the second to last will be the character at line.length minus 2. And for this to be potentially an Aplindrome, we need it to be the case that the first is equal to the last, and the second has to be equal to the second to last. Sorry, I've got that backwards. I always screw that up. That's actually what we'll be checking if it's a palindrome. I would check if the first is equal to the second to last, and if the last is equal to the second. Yeah, I think I have that right. So that would check essentially what I want to check for. Now, what's interesting is a more efficient way to do this would be actually, I set this up wrong. So I actually want to know if these first two and last two are exactly the same, is what I meant to say. If I go back to the problem statement, BABA is here, BABA is there. So what I really want to know is if the first two letters and the last two letters are the same in the same order. So I could have done that with a substring command, but the way I'm doing it here is sufficient. Okay, so I've checked that the first two and the last two are the same in the same order. Now, the tricky part is I want to look in the middle part of it, and I want to make sure that in the middle part that's a palindrome. So I'm going to get the middle part, and that's going to be line.substring, starting at position 2, going up to line.length minus 2, which doesn't include the one at length minus 2. So these will be the middle letters, and this is what I want to check to see if it's a palindrome. Now there's another problem, and that is there might be spaces. So to fix that, I'm going to make a temporary variable, I guess, and I'm going to loop through every position, and I can't use I, use J. I'll loop through every position in the middle, and then if the character at that position is not a space, then I will add it to the temp string. So by the end of this loop, the temp variable is going to have all the letters from the middle, but if there are any spaces, they will be removed. So this makes the job of determining if this is a palindrome significantly easier, because now what I need to do is I need to write a loop that starts at 0 and goes up to but not including half the length of the temp string. And once again I used I can use J, switch back to that, J, 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 and J++. And what I want to know is the character at position J the same as the character on the other end of the string? So I'll call the front one temp.char at J, and then the second one, the other end, so this is the back, it'll be temp.char at the length minus 1 minus J, which might take you a little while to reason in your mind why that's right. But when J is 0, you're going to take the very beginning one. And then here, the last character is temp.length minus 1, so subtracting 0 doesn't change anything. So these do give us the correct values on either side. And now we want to check, is it true that front is unequal to back? Because if that's the case, then we failed, and therefore it's not going to be an Aplindrome. So we have to figure out how we're going to make that work, where it's going to print out what we want, and then to make this loop stop, we could use a break command. But to make things a little bit cleaner, I'm going to make a Boolean variable here called failed that is false to start. And if it gets into this case, I'm going to set failed to be true, and then break out. That way, after the loop, if it's true that we have failed, then we can just print out the fact that the answer is no. It's not an Aplindrome. Otherwise, it must be true. At least so I think. We'll test these out in a second. Now there's actually one more case that I didn't check, and that's the else to this. So this is the case where the first two and the last two are not the same. So in this case, it can't be an Aplindrome. So this looks all good. I can try all the test cases that they gave me. So one of the ones they gave us was ABBA. It says it's not an Aplindrome. What about ABAB? Yes, it is. How about ABBAB? Yep. Yeah, I passed all the test cases. I must be right. But I can think of one little silly example. If we do AAAAAA, oh, and that's where I'm supposed to type in a number, so that will crash. Let me try that again. Type in a number, AAAAA. My code says that that's an Aplindrome, and that's false because this is actually a palindrome. And that's the case that a lot of people, I think, were failing in this program. So we need to actually check to make sure it's not a palindrome to start. And the way to do that, that I can think of, is add another case here, which is if it's true that the first is equal to the second, and the second is equal to the last, and the last is equal to the second to last, that's the case we're essentially missing, which is what if the first two letters and the last two letters are exactly the same? And if that's the case, then that's an immediate no. So now if I run my program and put in the number of test cases, type in AA, BAA, it says no, unlike before, because it's detecting that it was a false positive for an Aplindrome. You can't have the first two letters and the last two letters be the same. There has to be a switch that's necessary. So if everything is the same from the first two and the last two, it can't be an Aplindrome. So this is problem number 5. Not the only way you could do a lot of this. You don't have to use characters, for example. I could do this with strings. You also can do this without using Booleans and without break. But hopefully the strategy I used here made sense, and you can come up with your own strategy that you like.